Your commentators Martin Brundle and David Croft.
And a very warm welcome from Sochi for the third World Championship Russian Grand Prix, which has been dominated by Mercedes in the past, in a season that has been dominated by Mercedes as well. They go into it leading in the Constructors and the Drivers' Championship once more. And it's a 21-race calendar, the longest in the history of the Formula One World Championship, so plenty of time for the chasing pack to try and catch up. This is the third venue, the Sochi Autodrome, that winds its way or is based at a former Olympic venue. This is the site of the 2014 Winter Olympic Games, and 6 of the venues for those games are featured very prominently around this 3.6-mile circuit. 18 turns, as you can see, barely any elevation change, but 2 very long straights, 2 very heavy braking zones to try and promote some overtaking, and overtaking has certainly been on the increase in this 2016 season. We're here by the shores of the Black Sea. It's very much a sunshine resort, is Sochi, with the mountains away into the distance, and it looks absolutely gorgeous on this sun-kissed Sunday afternoon. For Nico Rosberg, it's yet another pole, and for Nico Rosberg, at the end of 53 laps, it could be yet another win. 6 races in succession he's won. Could be 7, and a magnificent 7 for him today, joining Michael Schumacher, Sebastian Vettel and Alberto Ascari as the only men in the history of the Formula One World Championship who have managed to win 7 races in a row. But he has competition behind him from Valtteri Bottas and Kimi Raikkonen. What can Lewis Hamilton or Sebastian Vettel do after their respective penalties and progress hampered during qualifying? It really could be quite a mixed-up race, even if we're looking at a one-stop strategy. And this is the way the grid lines up then, a 24th career pole for Nico Rosberg, and Valtteri Bottas on the front row for the 3rd time in his career. Kimi Raikkonen now top 4 on the grid for 6 races in a row, is alongside Felipe Massa. Daniel Ricciardo for Red Bull has Sergio Perez alongside him. Perez finished 3rd last year from 7th on the grid here. Sebastian Vettel gets a 5-place grid penalty for changing his gearbox. Who's next to him? Daniil Kvyat, remember China. Max Verstappen is ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who set no time in Q3 and has had his MGUH changed overnight. Carlos Sainz ahead of Jenson Button behind the top 10. Button out qualifying his McLaren teammate Fernando Alonso for the first time this season. Hülkenberg is sandwiched in between. The 2 Hasses for the 2nd time in 2016 managed to get out of Q1. Grosjean ahead of Gutierrez, but once again for Renault, disappointment out in the first part of qualifying for the 3rd time this year. Felipe Nasser is the leading of the Sauber drivers, but both Pascal Wehrlein at Manor and his teammate Rio Haryanto out qualifying in the dry Marcus Ericsson, who starts last for this Russian Grand Prix. And what do you make of it, Martin Brundle? Nico Rosberg, surely it's his race to lose from here. Where's the competition?
Well, it's another 50-odd laps before they hand the points out, and Rosberg knows as well as anybody else what can happen during that time. Errors, contact, reliability issues, so he knows full well he better keep an eye on his mirrors, because very fast cars are out of place, and that's Vettel, that's Hamilton, and there's others around him who are in pretty good form as well. But he has got the car to win this race if he gets out in front, and that's the key thing, isn't it? It's a very long way down to what is effectively the first braking point of the lap, which is turn 2, and we've got this single clutch start, so there's a lot more variability, a lot more driver input into that as well. So let's see who gets it off the line. They're clumsy things to get away. They might be magnificent at 220 miles an hour. They're appalling at no miles an hour to make them work. And let's see who can get them away.
Super soft tyres, medium tyres. They're the 3 compounds that Pirelli have brought to this race. Pretty much the whole field will be starting on the red striped super soft tyre, the fastest of the tyres. It should be able to go for about 20 laps until it needs to be changed for a pit stop. But there are 3 drivers out of sync. Nico Hülkenberg, Esteban Gutierrez and Marcus Ericsson have maybe thrown a bit of a strategic gamble. Looking at the track temperature, is it now in the range of the soft compound tyre? And might they benefit from going for a longer stint? They've got the softs on and they've gone a little bit different to everyone else.
And I don't blame them. If you're at the back of the field, what's the point in just following? And, you know, if you do the same thing, you get the same result. So they might as well try, go a little bit further, give themselves a bigger window. They've got nothing to lose, really, back there. And I would say Hülkenberg very much is in that position. But because the tyres take a while to come in, there's not an undercut here necessarily. You're not going to put a new set of tyres on and gain time.
No.
you may actually lose time if you. It just depends where you're at in the Grand Prix. But these track temperatures will coax people into coming in a little bit earlier and getting a fresh set of boots on.
We saw Sergio Perez running for 41 laps on the soft compound tyre last year, but he was hanging on a little bit at the end. Wouldn't have got that podium had it not have been for the collision and the contact between Massa and Bottas on the last lap. And we're on board now with Valtteri Bottas. Returns to Russia. He's gone well here before. He's finished on the podium here before, but he's got Kimi Raikkonen alongside him. On the run down into turn 2, I wonder how aware he'll be of the fact that it's Raikkonen who took him out last year. What about Sebastian Vettel and Danny Kvyat, who of course had their contact at China last time out?
I think you can't help but have that in the back of your mind, but it's all happening so fast, David. Those things launch. You know, if you're 10th on the grid, you're doing well over 100 miles an hour before you pass pole position. And down into those first braking zones, you are living on your wits, and you're not thinking, I better settle an old score here. But I think a little bit later on in the race, I completely agree with you. Then it's it might, when it's sort of one-on-one, it might just get a little bit more personal.
Sebastian Vettel then has Danny Kvyat alongside him. 5-place grid penalty for a change of gearbox, and starts 7th on the grid. He's never won from that far down. The Ferrari has the pace, we think, to be challenging for a podium today. Realistically, how quickly can he clear the likes of Sergio Perez or Daniel Ricciardo or Felipe Massa? He's got a very tough job on his hands.
I think Vettel and Hamilton have got the same problem. That's when they come up against a Williams.
Yeah.
Williams is fast in a straight line, fast overall on the lap as well. So I think they'll make good progress until and how hard will the Williams fight them? I mean, they're in for some great results today. So it's not a question of letting them through because it's not our battle today. It is their battle.
You saw the tyre graphic and the tyre choices that are available for the drivers. The thing to point out on that is that when you see, say, Supersoft and the red tyre, if it's completely red, that's a brand new set that can be used. And Nico Rosberg has got one brand new set of Supersoft tyres remaining. If it's got the little black box filled in, that means they're used tyres. They have been used in qualifying before. A lot of you have been getting in touch with us to say, can you explain the tyre graphic? We don't quite understand it, but it's used Supersoft tyres that Nico Rosberg will have to start this race. You could argue that it's 3 drivers of Finnish descent, all on the top 3 here, although Nico Rosberg races under the German nationality. His father, of course, Keke, was Finnish.
Finns are what they used to be, is that what you're trying to say?
Oh, very good, I like that.
Well, it's normally your territory, isn't it? Apologies for that.
Never a bad time for a bad pun, quite frankly. And that's the view that Lewis Hamilton has then, looking into the rear wing of Danny Kvyat, the home driver, the home favourite here. And when he spoke to the crowd in Russian, they all stood up to applaud and acknowledge him, how they would like to see him have another great race, akin to China, of course, last time out, where he managed to come 3rd on the race after starting 6th. But we have every car settling down on the grid. And it's lights out and away we go. They were held on the grid for a long time, but Rosberg's got away well, as has Valtteri Bottas and Kimi Raikkonen and Felipe Massa. Danny Ricciardo cuts off Sebastian Vettel, who's already gained a place on Sergio Perez as they race now down towards turn 2 and the first braking zone. It's Rosberg in the lead. Raikkonen on the inside of Valtteri Bottas. Raikkonen takes 2nd place and there's contact in the back. And it's the 2 Red Bulls that are getting tangled up. Danny Kvyat and Danny Ricciardo, and I think it's maybe Ricciardo that came up worse. And there's a spin. There is a spinning Ferrari of Sebastian Vettel, and he is out at the first corner and the first braking zone of this Russian Grand Prix, and he throws his hands up in the air and thinks, no, not again.
Yeah, and there was heavy contact, a Red Bull into the back of the Ferrari, which has punctured his tyre. There's the 2 Renaults side by side there. They've had great starts, but we've got a virtual safety car then. But I think he had a puncture, he had a really hard hit at the back by one of the Red Bulls that would have punctured his tyre, and I think he got into turn 3 with the car loaded up and ended up spinning off into the barriers.
And Nico Hülkenberg, who was out at turn 1 12 months ago, is out of this race as well. That's 2 Russian Grand Prix in succession, and he has barely lasted 2 corners. Hülkenberg out, Vettel out, and we think that it's Danny Kvyat was the man that hit Sebastian Vettel.
Yeah, and it was one of the Red Bulls, just didn't know which one from that angle, but yeah, he got in really hot and then almost made contact then with what would have been Daniel Ricciardo as well. So it was Kvyat confirmed running into the back of the Ferrari as Vettel scoops up the pieces. He knows that there's a lot of technology in there, there's a lot of information in there. He wants those back in the pits.
Lewis Hamilton got up into 5th place by the time the virtual safety car was deployed. Now we have the safety car itself out on the track. Rio Haryanto also has problems. Sergio Perez, as you can see there, Martin, massive problems. Vettel had already got ahead of Perez on the run down towards turn 2. Perez losing rubber all the time and damaging the car. If he doesn't slow down a little bit more, that's going to cause even more damage.
He's lucky in that the main carcass is gone, so it's not ripping the floor too much as Kvyat comes in, presumably for a new nose. And Ricciardo's pitted as well, so what are they going to do? Put some softs on and hope to get him to, we'll find out in a minute. So both Red Bulls, and they must be queued, are they?
Well, Ricciardo seems to me to have...
Yeah, they're queued.
Both
Red Bulls are queued up in the pit lane. Ricciardo behind Kvyat.
Well, Ted, as the Sauber of Ericsson comes in as well, what can you see?
Kvyat first, and he was slow getting away. Medium tyres for Kvyat.
He's going to do a Rosberg.
Exactly, going to try and go to the end of the race. And now Ricciardo, another slow stop for him. Medium tyres again. Gutierrez in the pits. It's soft tyres and a fair bit of damage to Sergio Perez on the Force India as well.
To confirm, Danny Kvyat hit Sebastian Vettel twice, and that coming after the Chinese Grand Prix incident as well. And we're going to expect to see more words being spoken between those two drivers.
I think it's clear whose fault it was this time, though. I would have lost good money on that, Crofty, seeing these tyres in today's Grand Prix. Although we got 42 degrees track temperature, I really wasn't expecting to see the medium compact. Barely seen it all weekend, have we?
Absolutely, barely any brought to this race, of course. They're one of the mandatory compounds that Pirelli have brought. But the first year that we had the Russian Grand Prix here in Sochi, Nico Rosberg, after flat spotting his tyres into that first braking zone at turn 2, then went and did the rest of the race on the medium tyre. So it's the gamble that those who've chosen the mediums are now willing to take on this year.
Well, we started with 22 pristine cars, and we ended up with a car boot sale by the exit of turn 2, didn't we?
And is that Sebastian Vettel actually driving the scooter? He wants to get some driving done this afternoon, and sadly for him, it's not going to be in that car. Massive disappointment for Sebastian Vettel, who has now failed to complete the first lap twice this season, something he actually hadn't failed to do since Silverstone in 2008.
Well, Hamilton might have had some bad luck this weekend, but that worked out a treat for him, didn't it?
Yeah.
An absolute treat. Renault 2 up in 10th and 11th for Magnussen and Palmer. They started 17th and 18th,
they did,
if I remember. So, how did Kvyat end up in front of Ricciardo then, to pit in front of him? So we've got the full safety car now, so they'll obviously nobody's lapped, so they'll all cruise up to the back of the pack, which any disadvantage in the pit lane other than position in the crocodile is negated.
Certainly within the melee, Kvyat was the one of the Red Bulls that was on the inside of that right-hander and actually taking to the runoff area there as Ricciardo carried on the track. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if the two Red Bulls actually didn't come together themselves. And Kvyat might have actually hit Ricciardo or the other way around. Certainly Ricciardo seemed at first to have got the major damage in that particular incident, but we have the safety car. We've completed 2 laps, one behind the virtual safety car and one behind the safety car itself. The order is this: Rosberg from Raikkonen, from Bottas from Massa, from Hamilton, from Verstappen, Alonso, Grosjean, Magnussen and Palmer. And let's take a look at the start again. 844 metres from pole down to the apex of turn 2, and already you see Sainz getting around the outside of Verstappen. Really good start from him in the Toro Rosso.
Yeah, so the front of the pack getting away relatively evenly, apart from Ricciardo, a little bit slow. So there then is Vettel, back to his gearbox penalty, giving him plenty of pain, isn't it, back there? He goes up the inside of turn 2, does Vettel. That's turn 1. So now he's following Ricciardo. He has a look at Ricciardo, and then steaming in, you'll see the Red Bull. And it's going to go clean into the back of the Ferrari there, so knocks him around into his teammate. And then at the back, about 4 or 5 more cars make contact.
Arianto involved in that particular one, and Hulkenberg getting sandwiched in the middle of it. Here's the Ferrari down the inside, as you say. Kvyat hits him there. Then Ricciardo has to go wide. Bits of bodywork all over the place as we see the Sauber and the Manor taking to the exit, and that's the Gutierrez and the Haas and Nico Hulkenberg in their particular tangle.
Yeah, so this one, we defended him in and I think we rightly so in China, but this is 100% young Danny Kvyat's fault. So Vettel lining up beautiful inside to Ricciardo. Wait for it. Oh, there he goes. Right. Now you can tell he's already got a puncture. So he turns his right rear puncture. Oh, he's ran again. He gets another.
Oh, I'm out. Crash. Somebody hit me in the rear, turn 2, and then somebody hit me in the rear again in turn 3. For sake. Honestly, what the are we doing here?
Well, I think you know Sebastian Vettel's view on that one.
I do think he already had a puncture, but he got a clout, didn't he? So who was it?
I'm trying to work out...
Kvyat again.
Kvyat twice, maybe. I'm trying to work out as well how Sergio Perez got his puncture, because Perez was ahead of Sebastian Vettel, but then the next time we saw him, he had the puncture on the rear right tyre. So the safety car's coming in on this lap, and if you heard colourful language from Sebastian Vettel then, wait till he sees Danny Kvyat later, and there might be even more need for a bleep machine. As it was, locking up on the brakes of Kimi Raikkonen, and he can now think about braking for real in the race once again. And I have to say, at the restart, Rosberg's got away really well, and Bottas is right on the rear wing of Kimi Raikkonen, and now he's side by side with Kimi Raikkonen. And has Raikkonen been caught napping a little bit? Hamilton's having a move on Massa. Bottas goes down the inside on Raikkonen. Hamilton goes down the inside on Massa. Bottas up in second place. Hamilton now up into fourth.
Super important move there for Lewis Hamilton. So we have to say that Raikkonen a little bit asleep on the restart, and Hamilton has also taken a position too, but he's cleared one of the all-important Williams that's so fast in a straight line. Massa under pressure too. This time Toro Rosso.
Yeah, this time from Max Verstappen, and look behind them, Fernando Alonso lurking in the McLaren as well. Alonso running in 7th place at the moment. Daniel Ricciardo is down in 18th, just behind Sergio Perez on the racetrack as they try and bid to battle back from their disappointment in the opening stages. They pitted, as has Kvyat, I should say, and Ericsson and Gutierrez as well. But let's look as they now make their way right-handed through turn 8. And it's Valtteri Bottas, Kimi Raikkonen, Lewis Hamilton, then Felipe Massa. Verstappen now under pressure from Fernando Alonso. Has that McLaren got the pace to challenge the Toro Rosso into the next braking zone? We're going towards turn 13 now. Under braking, just a little bit too far back for Fernando Alonso.
2 laps of safety car will have helped the McLaren Hondas as well on the fuel, as with most of the field too. I think the Mercedes were least struggling. This is one of the highest of the year for fuel consumption, in terms of heavy on brakes, heavy on fuel as you re-accelerate the car. And of course they're investigating the turn 2 incident. So I think the local boy and the Russian driver Daniel Kvyat can expect a little trip through the pit lane at some point for a penalty.
Danny Kvyat and his double tap on Sebastian Vettel will be looked at. Look, Rosberg is already streaking out way into the distance. It was nearly 3 seconds clear as they crossed the line of Valtteri Bottas in second place. Bottas now has Kimi Raikkonen pursuing him round turn 3. This is where 12 months ago on the last lap, Raikkonen lunged down the inside and got it wrong and took both drivers out of what could have been a very good point-scoring position. Too far back to make a move on this particular occasion, but I wonder how long this battle is going to go on for in the sunshine of Sochi this afternoon.
Rosberg knows he better be getting down the road because Hamilton has got great track position, but 2 very fast drivers in front of him.
And behind Lewis Hamilton, Felipe Massa starting to get detached a little bit. Max Verstappen still has Fernando Alonso in very close company. Romain Grosjean up into 8th place. Kevin Magnussen and Jolyon Palmer still running in the top 10 for Renault. Carlos Sainz is 11th at the moment, and Felipe Nasser and Jenson Button down in 13th.
I can understand Vettel's exasperation. He's like, you know, what are we doing here? It did look like a junior Formula race start, yeah. I have to say.
It's one of those, it's because it's such a long run down to the braking zone, Martin. There's plenty of chance to pick up a toe and then make a move. And talking of making a move, and is Danny Kvyat trying to make his way up through the field. He's got past the Sauber, as you can see, of Marcus Ericsson. He's now got Pascal Wehrlein, the next driver ahead of him, to try and get past and negotiate.
Did you see the way it's skating around, though, on those medium compound tyres? It looks a right handful for traffic, I wonder. Well, will those tyres come to Red Bull? It saves them a pit stop, but a pit stop is, you know, a bit over 20 seconds. It's no good if your car's undrivable. That looks horrible on traction.
He'll be praying, I think, for a safety car at some stage in this race before the rest of the lead runners start to pit once again. Daniel Ricciardo, meanwhile, up in the 17th place at the moment. Kvyat is 15th. And now on the inside, there goes Marcus Ericsson on Danny Kvyat. Super soft tyre against medium tyre. Sauber against Red Bull. Better traction for the Red Bull, but Kvyat has to go off the track there to maintain his progress. Round the outside of turn 3 goes Danny Kvyat. He looks like he might be able to get the place back against Marcus Ericsson here, but should he be allowed to do that, given that he had to go off the track in order to complete it?
Illegal, but he's got no traction. That's why the Sauber keeps coming back at him. So he'd had to yield that place back anyway, because you can't make a move like that.
He can do this one, though. This time the place will be Danny Kvyat. Conceded and yield, as you said, Martin, and now he has got past Marcus Ericsson. He's up in the 15th, and he can start to get after Pascal Wehrlein in the manor.
Yeah, they've got to wait for those tyres to come in, though, on the Red Bull, that's for sure. But, well, Red Bull had conviction on this because they put both cars on that tyre. It was something that was pre-planned. They haven't split strategy, but Kvyat has no traction off the corners at all.
Might take him 4 or 5 laps to try and get some temperature into those tyres, but a gamble they obviously felt they had to take after losing out and sustaining damage in the melee down at turn 2. Now we're on board with Lewis Hamilton. He is 4th at the moment, 4.5 seconds behind his teammate, but only 6/10 behind Kimi Raikkonen, and he'll have DRS, but so does Raikkonen as he tries to get past Valtteri Bottas. They watch on from the Ferrari pit wall. Let's have a look at the track. Yes, there goes Raikkonen on Valtteri Bottas. Bottas defends well, and now Raikkonen picking up a decent tow. He might try it again here at turn 4. Good cornering from the Williams. The Ferrari just losing out of touch, and he's a little bit too far back, is the elder of the two Finns, and now has to worry about Lewis Hamilton, maybe into the next corner, because Hamilton is going to make a move as well. Hamilton on Raikkonen, down the inside he goes. Raikkonen allows the room, allows Hamilton to come past. Fearful maybe of a bit of contact, but Hamilton is up into the podium places now, and he's 3rd.
Hamilton's thinking, I can win this race. I just need to get past that Williams. And the fact that although they're squabbling and costing each other time now, but they're keeping Rosberg within a reasonable distance for Hamilton to unpick it later on. We might get a fight.
Get in there, Lewis. Come on, man.
Pete Bonington is race engineer, rather enjoying what he was seeing there. Hamilton never has won from lower than 6th on the grid. He has gone from 10th this afternoon, now up into 3rd place, and we're only on lap 7 out of 53 here at Sochi this afternoon. You can see that Raikkonen was holding up Hamilton a bit. By the way, Hamilton is now in the Mercedes, got quite a way clear, and this is how the move happened. Kudos to Kimi for giving him the room and avoiding any contact there.
Yeah, and Lewis keeping it on the road as well, not having to take to the escape road.
Here goes Nico Hülkenberg on the struggling Danny Kvyat. Hülkenberg and Force India swapping to the soft compound tyre. Kvyat on the medium compound tyre, and that was a fairly easy move, as Sebastian Vettel would like to see what happened down at turn 2. And an obliging photographer is there to show him all the pictures. You can just see here, highlighted for you, Danny Kvyat. The red car ahead of him is going to get tapped once there, and then goes into Daniel Ricciardo. To Sebastian Vettel, that's why Ricciardo had to take avoiding action.
So he locks his right front, under-rotate as they call it. It's not going to be him. Is it going to be him again? It is him again.
That's, I think, the worst of the two crimes, isn't it, Martin?
I don't know if Vettel had a puncture, so was having to, because when we went on board with him, you could sort of sense it was spinning up, couldn't you? So whether Vettel had to lift because he already had a puncture from the first contact, but it was. Dear, oh dear.
Well, Rachel Brooks is waiting down in the media pen to talk to Sebastian Vettel. We'll hear from him in a moment. It just seemed to me, whether he had a puncture or not, the second tap was the one maybe that Kvyat could have avoided the most.
I think Red Bull have made a mistake putting that tyre on. They're just way too slow out the back.
1:46.4 for his last lap. Compare that, say, to Nico Hülkenberg, who's going that much faster on the soft compound tyre.
Yeah, and if all you're trying to do
Sergio Perez, I should say.
If all you're trying to do is save a pit stop, you'll lose a pit stop within 4 or 5 laps.
Exactly.
The thing you've got to do, though, is recognise that quickly and not keep trying to make it the right decision. Ted?
I think they're about to do that. the Red Bull mechanics are coming out into the pit lane. And there is also damage to Danny Kvyat's car. Pedals, the chief mechanic, the chief engineer, Paul Monaghan, has been having a look at the car of Kvyat ever since every time it comes past the pit lane. So it is damaged, but they thought maybe this medium tyre was meant to only last 45 laps. Of course, it's 53 laps, but they thought they could make it to the end. But now the Red Bull mechanics look like they're going to reverse their decision.
Yeah, Kvyat's coming into the pits, Ted. We can see him now.
Well, no, I wonder if it's to retire.
Well,
I think it's to retire.
Do you think so? I mean,
Yep.
It's a 60 kilometres an hour pit lane anyway, but as he stops, there are no tyres waiting for him. And that is massive disappointment in his home race then for Danny Kvyat.
He hasn't been given a 10-second stop go we don't know about.
Well,
Yes,
he must have done it.
There he is. Nice of the FI to let us know. Still, there you
It
go.
is up on the computer, it just didn't come up on the TV, did it? Unless I missed it.
No, I hadn't seen it come up on the TV at all. He has got a 10-second stop-go penalty. He has now served that. I'll tell you who else has got a penalty. Esteban Gutierrez for causing a collision. And that will have been back with Nico Hulkenberg. We saw the crash that took Hulkenberg out of this race. So Gutierrez will get a penalty where he just drives through the pits, and Kvyat had a 10-second stop and go.
This was the problem I was talking about pre-race, that coming up against a well-driven Williams is going to make the difference of Hamilton's afternoon, because Rosberg was 5.3 ahead. He's going to be, I suspect, 6 or 6 and a bit ahead at the end of this lap. Somehow Lewis, bringing himself into play, is going to have to get on and pass that Williams.
Well, the gap is 0.7 of a second officially between Bottas and Hamilton. It was 0.6 of a second on the last lap. So he's a tenth further back, and he didn't look to be in a position to make the overtake on the previous lap. And he's not in a position to make the overtake here. So this might not be the area where Lewis Hamilton can get past Valtteri Bottas. And if it's not Martin, where can he get past him?
Bottas doesn't get rattled too easily, does he? And they've got the same power unit, of course. It's a customer engine, but we're absolutely sure this year they've all got the 2016 units. Presumably he's got the same power modes available to him, and we've seen all through Bottas's career he's pretty unflappable under pressure. But you're absolutely right, David. So that means Lewis is going to have to launch one up the inside like he did on Raikkonen. And what he needs for that is some traffic. And right now, there isn't any. There's nothing in sight apart from Daniel Kvyat all by his lonesome coming around the last corner at the moment, because that's the sort of thing that will just push Bottas back into Hamilton.
I don't think we're ready for a pit stop just yet, but the Mercedes boys sorting out some tyres. Rosberg leads from Bottas from Hamilton, and they're both running, of course, Mercedes-Benz power units in the Williams and the Works team, which probably means, Martin, that they're harvesting in the same places on the same laps as well, where they're trying to regenerate that energy, and that won't help Hamilton in his bid to try and get past Bottas either.
Yeah, we'll be running the same strategy, right, per lap. Let's see what it's like for the Grand Prix, and Mercedes will be thinking, right, how far can we go? Can we undercut that Williams?
Well, we saw a great shot going around the final two turns then of just what Nico Rosberg's lead is at the moment, and time-wise it's 6.2 seconds. Hamilton gaining on the DRS, and once again not gaining enough. Now, can he carry more momentum through turn 2 and 3? And now onto turn 3 we go, to maybe edge him that little bit closer for turn 4. Very difficult to follow a car closely through that long left-hander. Can he get good traction coming out of turn 4? Maybe make a challenge where he got past Kimi Raikkonen. It seems not on that particular occasion. Here's the Sauber of Felipe Nasser and the manner of Pascal Wehrlein. And the manner to which Wehrlein went past Nasser there was probably not to the Brazilians' liking too much, and they rather did well not to collide on the exit.
Well, nice move though, wasn't it? But you are supposed, he is taking the racing line there, Wehrlein. He's a very softly spoken man, as we know from our feature with him pre-race, but that was incisive, shall we say.
So we're watching the battle for second and third. Raikkonen down in fourth. And here is Rio Haryanto, one of 3 drivers out of this race so far, along with Nico Hulkenberg at Force India and Sebastian Vettel at Ferrari. Where are the close battles elsewhere? We've just seen Wehrlein get past Nasser and up into 14th place. Sergio Perez is within a second of Jenson Button, who likewise is within the second, around about 6/10 behind Carlos Sainz. Still Magnussen and Palmer very much holding their own in the top 10 and producing better lap times in that Renault than Sainz in the Toro Rosso is doing. So Renault have frustratingly just been out of the points and in 11th place more often than they would have liked this season. Holding their own at the moment, and with a new floor on Jolyon Palmer's car. He's keeping tabs on his teammate and doing a decent job as it stands at the moment. Sergio Perez, I mentioned, catching Jenson Button, and into the pits now comes Carlos Sainz, who I assume, Martin, was just struggling on those super soft tyres a little bit.
You could just see Lewis moving around a bit, although his tyres look on the surface slightly better than the rear tyres on that Williams when it's loaded up. Raikkonen now, if anything, just moving back in on them a little bit as the Toro Rosso of Carlos Sainz stops for the soft compound. Will that get him to the end? Probably won't it?
Yeah, 42 laps. Perez at 41, as I mentioned, last year.
Might be a bit of a tall order today. 41 the track temperature now. So yeah, I think Raikkonen's hanging on there. Massa just dropping back a little bit.
Here is Kimi Raikkonen, who managed, by the way, in practice, a 19-lap run on the super soft tyre, which Ted wasn't the fastest of the day by any stretch, but if he can manage to eke out a few more laps on the super soft than others, might pay him dividends as he bids to get back into the podium places in the latter stages of this race.
Exactly, it's all about the end of the race when the tyres are getting worn out, and that's where the likes of Sainz are going to suffer unless they do 2 stops. I would have said that the pit window isn't going to open until the next lap around, and that's when it will open for all the front runners. So I think that's optimistic by Sainz. We thought Verstappen also might try and make 2 stops, but in his position at the moment, his lofty position up the field, I think he's just going to shadow what everyone else does around him.
Right.
Good position for the Renaults, you've got to say, Crofty, at the moment.
We have been saying that.
Yep.
Decent position there for Lewis Hamilton. Once again, frustratingly, about 3 car lengths too far back to make the go. And this is where Williams, he's taken a wider line, Lewis Hamilton, through turn 3. And Williams holding its own.
We have a slow puncture, Philippe, a slow puncture, box is left.
In he comes, Felipe Nasser. He was running down in 16th place. So a pit stop for Nasser.
I think what's happening here is that Williams got more graining on its tyres, and it's backing up. The lead now is 7.8 for Rosberg. It's just backing Hamilton into Raikkonen a little bit.
Which Kimi Raikkonen will be very grateful for. And I wonder as well if Lewis Hamilton's having to back off a bit more to stop his tyres graining even more. And as he's been told, look, if you can't get past Bottas and you can't do it within a couple of laps, just give yourself a bit more clean air.
Pretty massive that turn as well. Kimi's really made some ground on this lap, hasn't he? Because they have to get rid of the DRS, the rear wing wide open, just before they throw it into what is a pretty severe left-hander, and then a big stop shortly afterwards.
He's actually made 0.7 of a second up through the first 2/3 of this lap. As Nico Rosberg sets a new fastest lap of the race, the 1:41.4. First driver into the 1:41s as well. He's now 9 seconds clear out in front. Hamilton is out of DRS range of Valtteri Bottas. Raikkonen within DRS range of Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, that's surprising. Lewis has dropped out of that, and that was the thing that was keeping him close to the Williams. Let's see if he can... it was a 43.4, so a full 2 seconds slower than his teammate out in the lead, who's now got a 9.2 seconds lead. So I think... well, unless Rosberg has problems, we're now looking at, can Hamilton finish second here this afternoon and minimise the pain, to say the least, against the problems he had in qualifying. But at the moment, he's struggling now suddenly to stay, unless we see him just pop a quick lap in when he's bought himself a little bit of space.
Well, we'll watch on that, Martin. Do you want to hear from Sebastian Vettel at the moment?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Well, why not? He's with Rachel.
So just talk us through what happened at the start there from your point of view.
I think you saw more than me. I think it was fairly clear. I just saw the footage and yeah, got a big hit. Lucky not to spin into turn 2, and then got another huge hit which just turned me around and couldn't avoid hitting the barriers.
both hits were Danny Kvyat. He's had a 10-second stop-go penalty for it. Were you worried before today about contact with him when you saw you lining up on the grid?
No, I wasn't worried to make contact with anyone. So obviously these things happen. It doesn't help me because I'm here and the race is still happening. So something is not right. But what can I do now?
Was there a problem at all after the first hit? Did you have a puncture?
I wasn't sure. I had a look. I was equally attacking Lewis into turn 3. I had a look. It's not so much you can see. You can imagine the mirror is that big. So yeah, I wasn't sure. So I wanted to get a feel. But at the same time, I wanted to get a feel. I got a big hit, which was enough to, I think, conclude that there was enough damage so that I couldn't continue.
There's always incidents at the first braking zone here, but will you speak to Danny specifically, or do you think everyone just needs to be a bit more careful?
I think there's nothing I could have done differently. I think if anybody needs to talk to somebody, I guess it's him.
Might have to go off and see the doctor, Sebastian Vettel. He was biting his lip quite a bit through that and his tongue as well. I think trying to keep his emotions under check.
Yeah, so what he was saying there, which is interesting, as Jolyon Palmer pits and puts the softs on, is that, yeah, I didn't know if I had any damage, so I was taking it a little bit easy through turn 3, and that looks like it's caught Kvyat out again.
We'll hear from Danny Kvyat at the end of this race. He's still involved in it. There are 19 cars, and he is running last of them at the moment. Hulkenberg and Haryanto also out. We're on board with Lewis Hamilton, who's got himself back into DRS range. Valtteri Bottas ahead of him. He's just started to motor a little bit faster, but Raikkonen keeping tabs with Lewis Hamilton, and neither of the trio keeping tabs with Nico Rosberg, who's now over 10 seconds, nearly 11 seconds clear at the front of the field. And we just saw, didn't we, Kimi Raikkonen disappearing with Lewis Hamilton through turn 15. There's Rosberg making his way on the other side of the track down towards turn 2. It's another Sunday afternoon where Nico Rosberg is having a race all to himself.
So I think it was Lewis just backing off a bit, cooling his tyres, and maybe even having to cool his engine a bit with travelling so closely behind the Williams and all the hot air coming off the back of that Williams. And whatever he does, Raikkonen can follow at the moment. So it's Bottas is like the cork in the bottle.
And we go back once again, Ted Kravitz, to that 19-lap run that Kimi Raikkonen did on Friday in FP2. And we know that he can go a long, long way on these super soft tyres.
And of course, because of the tyres here, the undercut, what we're used to seeing, doesn't work here. So really, Williams' best bet of staying ahead of Hamilton, obviously, is to make the pit stop at the same time as Mercedes. So I can see them down here on the pit wall. Williams are just eyeing up what Mercedes are doing, but no action yet. Everyone's just hanging it out, see what happens.
So a little bit further though, and Hamilton might have a pit stop advantage. It's quite a slow pit stop, of course, because of the 40 miles an hour. But looking back to Verstappen, he's not going to be too much longer. To Alonso rather than 7th. Can they find some clear air basically? Because it's obvious that they're now lapping 1.5, 2 seconds a lap slower than Rosberg. If they can get Hamilton onto another set of tyres and into some clear air, then that'll be a way of clearing and past the Williams.
Normally, Mercedes would stop their lead driver on the track first. Is Rosberg far enough ahead as Valtteri Bottas now pits? So that becomes a bit irrelevant now as to what Mercedes may or may not do. But I'm sure Lewis Hamilton is absolutely chuffed to bits to see the rear wing of Valtteri Bottas disappear out of his way. Bottas coming in for his pit stop after 16 laps of this race, and he was second in the race when he did it. Soft compound tyre goes on. They've been very smart this year with the pit stops down at Williams after problems last season, and they have been very rapid indeed. And another sub 3 second pit stop for the Williams crew. Where will that get Valtteri Bottas back out on the track? Fernando Alonso has gone past already. Next car is Romain Grosjean, and they will want to be ahead of Romain Grosjean. It's going to be tight, but he manages it.
Yeah, we know Williams have been working hard at the factory, hard at the track. A 2.7 again. Tremendous stop, and that's the critical moment, isn't it? That stop has meant that he's not behind the Haas there, and it gets him clear air, and off he goes. And that's the difference between winning a race or being on a podium and not. So those fractions matter so much in the pit stops. But I'm assuming now we've got the equivalent of hammer time coming up from Lewis Hamilton. They're not allowed to tell him that anymore. And I have to say, I am missing a bit of team radio. I think it's gone a little bit too far the other way. But Ted's down there.
Vettel's going for a little word with Christian Horner. A little bit of handbags down here in the pit lane. Sebastian Vettel's just gone onto the Red Bull pit stand and found Christian Horner and is quite literally having a word in his ear hole about his driver. So there you go, interesting. Interesting. This is going to be a fascinating story to follow up on. I think Vettel, what he was intimating with Rachel was that I'm not going to have a word with Fiat, but Horner needs to, because he needs to get his act together and get himself under control.
Into the pits comes the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton for his pit stop. So Mercedes covering off the Williams strategy. Let's see if hammer time for one lap actually did enough. Soft tyres going on Lewis Hamilton's car as well. 3.2 seconds. The Mercedes crew half a second slower than the Williams crew on that pit stop. And we're looking now to see where Valtteri Bottas is. That's not him coming around the final corner. That was Alonso. There's Bottas there. And as Bottas makes his way past our commentary box midway down the grid, Hamilton can now go from 60 kilometres an hour to get accelerating. And this is going to be tight once again. Has Valtteri Bottas got enough pace to get past Lewis Hamilton? They're now going wheel to wheel. Down into turn 2, Valtteri Bottas stays ahead of Lewis Hamilton. After the pit stops, it was a matter of a few car lengths in it. Hamilton half a second slower on the pit stop.
So this is the critical point, Kimi.
And now Raikkonen has got to try and leapfrog the pair of these, but Mercedes tried it with a bit of hammer time, but sadly, he just couldn't get Lewis second place ahead of Bottas in terms of net race running.
All of that following other cars when he had to put the pace in, it wasn't there. And they pitted him, you're right, to cover off Williams. Williams have outsmarted Mercedes there because when he just didn't have the raw pace we expected.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Martin, half a second Lewis Hamilton was stationary longer than Valtteri Bottas. That's what made the difference there. And I'm not saying that that's the crew's fault. I didn't know whether Lewis had made his marks or not. And obviously, if you don't stop right on your marks, it makes it a lot harder for the pit crew. So what about Kimi Raikkonen? How are his split times on this particular lap? He's maybe a couple of tenths shy as Hamilton thinks about going for it into turn 13. Raikkonen making his way round the final corner. He's not pitted at the end of this lap. So Rosberg from Raikkonen, from Massa, Verstappen, Alonso, Bottas, and then comes Hamilton as well.
This is Hamilton's best chance if they start to catch Alonso for track position. So Alonso's not going to get a load of blue flags.
Massa's pitted now as well. Super soft goes off, soft goes on, and out of the pits he goes. And there's a 2.3 second pit stop from the Williams crew. Fast and consistent on this afternoon here in Sochi. Now here goes Hamilton. He's lining up a move. Fernando Alonso will be looking in his mirrors. DRS wide open for Hamilton. Throws one down the inside on Valtteri Bottas and makes the move very comfortably indeed. Can Bottas now hang on to Hamilton as they go through turn 3 and maybe try a lunge himself into the next right-hander? He's gone onto the marbles a little bit. He's going to make it difficult for himself. Hamilton has got past Valtteri Bottas and is now accelerating away to the extent that he's almost being held up by Fernando Alonso in the next corner.
Yeah, Bottas got very wide in turn 3, picked up some understeer and had a bit of a scary moment, I'd imagine. And that's released. Hamilton's on his way. Now, what can he do then about the gap? If anything.
So what does Ferrari do here now as well? Do Ferrari want to get Kimi Raikkonen in for his pit stop? Because what happened there will have delayed Valtteri Bottas a bit. This could play into Ferrari's hands a touch, as Hamilton now has a little go on Fernando Alonso, and that was way too easy in terms of those who want to see a big fight between a Mercedes and a McLaren. No defence put up by Fernando Alonso, and this is when Hamilton got past the Williams.
Really kept his head. Lovely touch on the brakes. No drama, no locking. And this is where the Williams got onto the marbles, the discarded pieces of rubber, and started heading off towards the scenery. A lovely bit of yaw there, a little bit of oversteer in Hamilton's car. You can see as he launches it through the middle of turn 3 and talking to his former boss. Remember the loving those guys used to have for years, winning 4 championships together. Well, there wasn't too much of that going on there, was there?
Hamilton's now set a new fastest lap of the race. He's currently running in 4th place, but ahead of him, Max Verstappen, Kimi Raikkonen and Nico Rosberg haven't pitted as yet.
And that included overtaking 2 cars, didn't it?
Yes.
That fastest lap of the race.
And he's got a bit of DRS to overtake Valtteri Bottas and Fernando Alonso as well,
Yeah,
but
true.
You're right. a 1:41.2. He was actually 7/10 of a second quicker than Rosberg was on that previous lap. Now Bottas getting held up by Fernando Alonso, and I wonder when Ferrari think it's a good time to bring Kimi Raikkonen in for his pit stop. No sign yet that they're coming out.
And what's crucial there for Lewis is he's not going to spend lap after lap damaging his tyres following the Williams on this stint. That move, the early move, was important for him if he's got any chance of turning it around with Rosberg.
Just looking at the times here. If they brought Raikkonen, and they are bringing Kimi Raikkonen in, the Ferrari pit crew are coming out. Bottas has, in the nick of time, managed to get himself past Fernando Alonso. That's a crucial move there, because Raikkonen's now coming in for his pit stop. Bottas coming towards the end of the lap, and this is going to be very, very tight indeed. Rosberg leads this race. Hamilton is pretty much a net second. It was a 2.4 second stop by the Ferrari crew, so they've done their bit there to give Raikkonen every chance of being ahead of Valtteri Bottas at the end of their pit stops. Bottas now is coming around the final corner. You can see him. Kimi Raikkonen on the track is behind Lewis Hamilton, who's just gone past, and now where's Valtteri Bottas? We want to see if the Williams is going to be close. It is going to be close, but he's going to be behind Kimi Raikkonen here. And that overtake of Hamilton on Bottas, and the fact that the Williams was then stuck behind the McLaren of Fernando Alonso, has now allowed Raikkonen a crucial move up the pecking order and into what is a net podium place at the moment.
Yeah, that worked out well, and I think clearing Alonso and fighting together cost Bottas that position, despite the amazing pit stop. But amazing too from Ferrari, wasn't it?
Yeah.
How fast can they go? Be like a camera shutter before they're finished.
Well, are we going to get sub 2 second pit stops in Formula One? Some teams claim they can do it anyway, but under the pressure of race conditions, we've not seen it yet, as Mercedes crew waiting for Nico Rosberg, who can actually afford sub 10 second pit stop to aim at and probably still come out ahead, but would like to preserve his lead, because it's now not the Williams or the Ferrari that is behind him on the racetrack. It's his teammate Lewis Hamilton that he's got to worry about.
His tyres will be 4 laps younger.
Yeah, and that will certainly help in the latter stages of this race. He's not conceded the lead as Nico Rosberg. Max Verstappen still to make his way round the final turn, running in second place, but worth pointing out Verstappen has not made his pit stop as of yet. That's why he's so far up the road. So the podium places, really, when Verstappen makes his pit stop, will be Rosberg, Hamilton and Raikkonen. And now, whatever Williams do, well, they've got to try and get past the Ferrari on the track itself. Absolutely superb, apart from a little juddery getaway from Kimi there.
Does he actually shake his head as he's going? Like a little shake of the head almost.
Because he kind of knew that it was a slightly shaky getaway. And Riva Benny desperately trying to look out to see where the Williams is. That's the Toro Rosso of Max Verstappen. So behind the top 5, Felipe Massa running in 6th place at the moment, ahead of Sergio Perez. And then Marcus Ericsson running 8th. Ericsson has pitted. Fernando Alonso 9th, Daniel Ricciardo 10th. Good race this for Marcus Ericsson, who kind of avoided a lot of the problems befalling others around him at the start, and lapping in the late 1:43s at the moment, but that's quicker than Daniel Ricciardo. Ricciardo on the medium compound tyre for Red Bull, as is his teammate Danny Kvyat. He's running 18th, Ricciardo 10th. Kevin Magnussen runs 11th. And then Romain Grosjean, Carlos Sainz and Jolyon Palmer. Jenson Button running down in 15th. And then comes Felipe Nasser and Pascal Wehrlein 17th. And Esteban Gutierrez is the one that I haven't mentioned. He's running last at the moment. One of 2 drivers to receive a penalty in this race for causing a collision when he took out Nico Hülkenberg. And it was a stop-go, 10-second stop-go penalty, the most severe race penalty for Danny Kvyat for tapping twice Sebastian Vettel, who's out of this race along with Hülkenberg and Haryanto. And there is Max Verstappen finally coming in for his pit stop. When we say his pit stop, it should be a one-stop race, this one. Where will Verstappen come back out on the track, and what's happening to his teammate? There's Carlos Sainz getting past Jolyon Palmer, going into turn 2. Palmer will try and fight it back, hasn't got much room there, and in the end has to take to the runoff area to avoid a nasty little collision. Verstappen's back out on track again, ahead of Marcus Ericsson, so he's in 7th place and Ericsson in 8th. So, looking now as everyone has made their pit stop, Martin, I wonder, Sergio Perez, can he do an effective naught stop, as it were? Because he stopped behind the safety car, like Rosberg did in 2014. And Perez had to come in because he had that puncture. Stopped on lap 1. Can he go to the end of the race on a set of soft compound tyres?
Well, it's his speciality at Sauber, wasn't it? Has been at Force India.
And a set of used soft compound tyres as well.
I don't know if it's something to put at the top of your CV, being kind on your tyres as a racing driver, but it certainly pays dividends these days. And well, I think the answer is yes, but it's all about scoring a few points. I think Red Bull's decision was, okay, let's just get into the point. It wasn't a racy decision they took there, was it? Because they're 3-4 seconds. The problem Red Bull have got is Alonso pitted and stayed out in front of them, and is on a brand new set of soft tyres, and Ricciardo's still on his mediums. Kvyat is back down in 18th place after his stop and go penalty as well. And I think what we're seeing here is Williams making better use of their tyres in qualifying, firing them up, lighting them up, but hurting a bit more in the race.
Yeah.
And that's what put the Ferrari and the Mercedes ahead of them. But
and Ted, just to bring you in on this strategy, I think one man in the top 10 who will have to stop again will be Marcus Ericsson, because he's running the super soft tyres. They're not going to go to the end of the race now, are they?
No, yes indeed, but I am interested in Ricciardo. We haven't spoken much about Daniel Ricciardo after such a messy opening lap, but in the last 2 laps his lap times just weren't good. 145s. He's got back into the 144s. So, Crofty, it did take a while, as you suggested earlier.
143s and a half.
Well, that's good, but he needs to do a few more of them, because otherwise he won't make up the 25 seconds that he would have gained otherwise by running a faster tyre.
Yeah, exactly. It's working windows, Martin. Temperature working windows. 40,
stint 4. Well, that was a little bit late out there, wasn't it? I suspect he didn't see that.
You might not know as well that he and Hamilton just set exactly the same lap time on lap 23. There's a gap of 12.7 seconds between them. Hamilton's now just set the new fastest lap of the race, as you can see. And on track, there goes Fernando Alonso on the Sauber of Marcus Ericsson. Good move that for Fernando Alonso. And currently running in 8th place. And the only McLaren driver to score a point so far this season is Stoffel van Dorn, who deputised, of course, for Alonso in the Bahrain Grand Prix. And Eric Boulier, with the shades on in the sunshine on the pit wall this afternoon, will be very happy, I'm sure, to see Alonso running in 8th. Jenson Button down in 15th at the moment. And Alonso a 143.6 for his last lap, and Button a 143.4, but quite a few places between them, sadly, for Jenson Button.
Yeah, 12.7 seconds. He's got to take a half a second a lap out of Rosberg. A tall order, isn't it? Nico's driving way too nicely for that. But, let's see how hard does Lewis want to push those tyres? Does he want to try and close the gap? Try and put the frighteners on his teammate. Try to destabilise him somehow. Force him into an error.
Well, you're Lewis Hamilton. After qualifying yesterday, visibly down, the Fleet Street press boys are trying to get Lewis to come up with a word that could describe his mood. He even tried numb. He said no, not numb. But he was visibly down, as you would expect, suffering the same mechanical problem for 2 race weekends in a row and costing you any chance of going for a pole position. And he was down this morning. When we spoke to people at Mercedes-Benz, they said his mood probably still hasn't improved.
You like my pace? You like it?
You're doing well, Checo. Pace is good.
We do like his pace, and that's fine. Carlos Sainz is under investigation for forcing another driver off the track. That'll be Jolyon Palmer.
Yep.
We saw after Sainz got past Palmer down at turn 2 a few moments ago. But if you're Hamilton, you know, your mood is now going to be suddenly improved by the fact you're running second in a race you started 10th. You're Lewis Hamilton, you know him well, Martin. He's not the sort of guy that likes to hang back and preserve his tyres now, is he?
I think you want to be... when he lost 3/10 on that lap, so the last 2 laps have gone gap 12.9, 12.7, 12.9. I think Lewis knows, unfortunately, for him, that Rosberg's got all the speed and all the equipment he needs to maintain a gap like that. So, what can he do?
Stewards have been really tough here today, you know. Carlos Sainz has a 10-second time penalty for forcing another driver off the track. Now, that's not a 10-second penalty where he has to come in, stop for 10 seconds and then go again. If he's going to pit again, he has to wait 10 seconds before any work can be carried out on his car. And if he's not going to pit again, he'll have 10 seconds added to his race time at the checkered flag.
On a one-stop race, or expected one-stop race, that's extra painful penalty, isn't it? But we saw that earlier on. I mean, that was particularly brutal, that one. I must admit, he did shove him. But who did we see? It was Wehrlein on a Sauber, was it? Yeah. That Wehrlein and Nasser, and he wasn't quite as brutal as that one of young Carlos. But similar.
Manuel Pirro, the race driver steward for this weekend. It's quite a harsh one. He could have had a 5-second time penalty, but they've gone for the 10-second one there.
Yeah, I think the refereeing should be a bit like cage fighting. You know, it's too strict. It's too many rules and it's too strict. You've got to have a referee. You can't imagine a football match or a rugby game, can you, without a referee? It'd be anarchy. There's got to be some guidelines. But, you know, Lewis, reprimand yesterday for not driving left across the runoff area to go past the keep left sign when he'd backed off on the lap anyway. It just seemed unnecessary to me.
Worth pointing out that now 2 reprimands this season for Lewis Hamilton. One more would give him a 10-place grid penalty at that particular race event, or the next race event, if the reprimand comes during the race itself. It's kind of 3 strikes, you're out, but you're back 10 places.
Yeah, and the other one was for reversing up into Parc Fermé when he'd been asked to do so.
Key being they're both driving offences as well, and if they are driving offences, it counts for the grid place. Kimi Raikkonen got reprimanded once for turning up a few minutes late to a press conference. So they make the rule that as there goes Pascal Wehrlein down the inside on Felipe Nasser. Hits the curb, Nasser has to go wide, and he comes back out onto the track. Did he go to the left of the bollard there, I wonder? Either way, Danny Kvyat is all over the rear wing of the Manor. Kvyat thinks about going down the inside. Pascal Wehrlein is too far away on that one. But he came from a long way back, did Pascal Wehrlein. Didn't make the move cleanly, caught the curb, and as a result, the Manor was thrown sideways a little bit. Nasser had to take avoiding action, and Nasser keeps hold for the time being of 16th place.
Dr. Marco there, we suspect, fancies putting Magnussen in, moving him upstairs into the main Red Bull team for next year. And I'm afraid Danny Kvyat did it. Sorry, who did I say? Yeah.
Magnussen, but we'll start that rumour if you want.
Sorry. And yeah, absolutely. I think Kvyat did a great job in China, and he hasn't covered himself in glory here.
Right, Perez is not doing a effective naught stop. He's come into the pits as Wehrlein wants to go left and right and left, and in the end ends up going nowhere, and he might be going backwards a little bit here. There goes round the outside, Danny Kvyat round the left-hander, but there's just not enough straight. But Wehrlein really struggling on his tyres a bit, you would think, because now Kvyat can pick him off on the exit of turn 16, and the Russian gets past Pascal Wehrlein, moves up into 17th place. And Wehrlein in a hurry to get past Felipe Nasser, and it's cost him in the end 1 place. Doesn't move ahead of the Sauber, moves behind the Red Bull.
Pretty feisty stuff, I enjoyed that. But you're right, Perez, he said his pace was good, so they're obviously expecting him to be coming in again. That's been a fast car, the Force India, in Perez's hands. Unfortunately, Hülkenberg already out of the race. So basically, Wehrlein doesn't want to yield, turns into this off-camber corner. The back end says, no chance I can stick like that. And he has to turn into the slide as Kvyat steals the apex of the next corner.
So you've got to watch Perez at the end of this race. They've been on way fresher tyres than those around him. It's the soft compound tyres that have gone on. I suppose because he had no new set of soft tyre, there was no way he was going to complete the rest of the race distance there.
He's got a lot of people to pass, though, hasn't he?
I just wonder as well, Martin, when he said, you know, do you like my times? Is that Perez's way of trying to get around the radio ban on coded messages?
It seems odd. Yeah, as NASA's under for not going left. I think he'll take a penalty for that back, unfortunately. But yeah, I wonder, because it all seemed happy families, didn't it? It was like, am I going faster? Yeah, really well.
Really happy.
Come in the pits. So maybe you're right. Maybe it was a bit of a code there.
Because coded messages are not allowed, as are blatant messages. And there goes Daniel Ricciardo on Kevin Magnussen. Ricciardo, with those medium compound tyres working nicely, it seems, on the Red Bull now, has got past Magnussen, put himself up into 8th place. It's worth keeping an eye on Ricciardo as well here. As Magnussen goes down the inside, just manages to bring the car to a stop. There's Romain Grosjean getting involved as well. Grosjean tries to go around the outside of Magnussen, has to switch to the inside, does well to stay ahead of Ricciardo. Carlos Sainz is on the back of this quartet, and now suddenly 4 cars all scrapping in this battle for 8th all at the same time. Sainz gets very close to Ricciardo, has to go very, very wide coming out of that right-hander. And Kevin Magnussen, well done for you for getting the place back. And now streaking ahead somewhat. But I do say, watch Ricciardo on the medium tyres. That rubber will be in better condition in the last 10 laps than some of those around him. And as you said, Martin, expect a penalty for Felipe Nasser. Add 5 seconds to his race time, unless he pits again.
And of course, Sainz has got a 10-second penalty as well to add to his time. We must remember when we're watching this tremendous, I love all this driving. Yeah. It's like it's the last lap of the World Championship and they're all up for it, isn't it? And actually what they're fighting over is 8th, 9th, 10th and 11th.
Red Bull's coming into the pits there as well. Ted, we'll go down to you.
Yeah, and all this, McLaren fans, is helping Fernando Alonso, still without points in 2016, amazingly, as is Jenson Button, but going very nicely now in 7th. Let's just see what tyres the Red Bull put on. They're just making their pit stop now, and you've got to say it didn't really work well. They had to stop anyway. They probably would have been better just putting a soft tyre on, as well as this set of soft tyres as well. But anyway, that's done and dusted on a messy day for Red Bull. Just as for Jenson Button, if any of you were wondering, couldn't take advantage of the melee at the start and kind of just lost out to the Renaults as well, and is having a bit of a lonely race down there. And what is he, 12th, something like that? Or is he lower
down
than
at
that?
13th.
13th now.
Oh, he's 12 now, sorry, he's just moved up.
Yeah, he just overtook Jolyon Palmer.
Yeah.
Carlos Sainz, as we watch Kevin Magnussen on Daniel Ricciardo, Carlos Sainz has just got past Sergio Perez and up into the points, 10th at the moment for him. And they like that down at Renault. Magnussen throwing one down the inside and showing what he can do. This is what it looked like on board as he came past from Daniel Ricciardo. And then, where's Grosjean come from? That's what he's wondering.
Watch Grosjean light his rear tyres up coming out of this corner. We don't see it, unfortunately. This was Button on Palmer.
Yep, down at turn 2. Bit of a lock up there from Jolyon Palmer. Button down the inside on him. And Fernando Alonso, Ted was saying, all this melee helping him. Alonso currently 11 races without a top 10 finish. Worst equaling run of his Formula One career. Stretches back that time to his rookie year in 2001. So he'll be very keen to get points today and stop that particular streak.
Yeah, so to remind you then, we've got to add 10 seconds to Sainz time, so he's net 10 with a World Championship point, but if you add 10 seconds, he's back there in 13th, 14.
Yeah. 5 seconds to be added to Felipe Nasser's time, which will put him behind Danny Kvyat at the moment. And Pascal Wehrlein, there goes Perez on Sainz. He doesn't want to wait for the 5-second time penalty to be added at the end. Perez gets some overtaking done himself. Sainz has the inside line through turn 3, maybe getting onto the marbles a touch there. Sergio Perez won't help him out too much. And now down towards turn 4. The Mexican has the inside line.
Starting to be quick out. Starting to be very quick out.
And Perez has covered him off. He's swapping around a little bit there, Sergio Perez.
Drunk, the pair of them there. They were moving around so much.
but he is 10th place, holds on to 10th place through there as well. We've not mentioned the battle for the lead, because there really is no battle for the lead at the moment, but it is down to 11.1 seconds. Worth mentioning, at the end of lap 31, Hamilton was a full second faster than his teammate, Nico Rosberg, and Rosberg's now coming up on a bit of traffic. Gutierrez and Wehrlein and Ricciardo, Kvyat and Nasser. He's now joining that particular fight, so might be being held up just a little bit more as he picks his way through the back markers. So you've got that particular scrap going on, then you've got a very close scrap from Magnussen, who's running in 8th, down to Palmer in 13th. There's not we're watching this now, Martin, there's not a huge amount of distance between any of those cars on the track.
No, it was a good fight, isn't it? We'll see plenty of that. Hamilton's got the gap down here in Russia to 11.1 seconds now, but we took a second out of Rosberg on the previous lap. Why is that?
I think a bit of traffic, to be fair, because he's now right in the middle of 4 or 5 cars.
So we had that, including the 2 Red Bulls.
Looking at this particular lap, Hamilton is gaining even more on Rosberg as Rosberg picks his way through that, but of course Hamilton will have to do that himself at some stage. So far in this race, though, Nico Rosberg has led every single lap, and there go the 2 Red Bulls on each other. Daniel Ricciardo past Danny Kvyat, and Ricciardo on the soft compound tyre, Kvyat on the medium. One would imagine that was team orders to let the man on the faster tyres through and not be held up. Either way, Ricciardo now 15th. The gap 9.6 seconds out in front. There is Rosberg. He's got past Nasser. He's got past Wehrlein. Next on the road will be Danny Kvyat in the Red Bull.
Daniel Ricciardo, as you say, but I don't think there should be blue flags. I know I've mentioned this 50 times before. It's a driving skill. Managing the back markers.
Well, what it does, the blue flag, yes, it makes it easier for those out in front, but it wrecks the race of those behind, because they have to get out of the way. Say at the moment, if you've got to the inside down the back straight, you're onto the marbles, and then that's going to slow your lap time down quite drastically. So often back markers' pace looks a lot worse than it is, because they're running around on the marbles, hopping out of people's way all the time.
I can't remember which race it was, but because I've been hit on the head too many times, but it was a race got destroyed. I think Jean-Marie Balestre wanted to make sure it never happened again. There was a good squabble at the front, and then they just got dispersed because they couldn't get through the lap runners before blue flags, and boom, we had blue flags introduced.
So there's your race leader, Nico Rosberg. He's gone past Danny Kvyat now. As I say, led every lap of this race, started on pole, hasn't quite got the fastest lap yet. His teammates got that one. There is Hamilton in hot pursuit. He's never achieved the Grand Slam in his racing career in Formula One as Nico Rosberg, so if he can get a fastest lap, he might be able to do that here this weekend.
So Lewis is very close being able to seize rival at the end of the straight, and he's going to have to be brutal through those back markers. The gap down to 8.4.
It's where you come across those back markers, and it dictates obviously where you're going to lose all the lap time. And he might just find Lewis Hamilton that he's right on the tail of some of them by the time he gets onto that back straight, and could slice through them a little bit faster. Just gone 4 o'clock in the afternoon here in Sochi. The sun getting lower and lower and glinting off the bodywork of the cars. Hamilton, though, can see quite clearly ahead of him the task that he's got. That's a Toro Rosso of Max Verstappen going very slowly indeed. We had problems with his engine, Martin, didn't we, on the way to the grid? We reported that things weren't quite right.
I have something with the engine.
Well, it's engine worries once again for Max Verstappen. He's out of this Russian Grand Prix, becomes the 4th driver to be out of the race this afternoon. His teammate Carlos Sainz, 8 retirements in the last 15 races, who has been having all the woes when it comes to reliability. Today it's Verstappen. That will promote Fernando Alonso up into 6th place, and sadly for Verstappen, caused him to walk back to the garage a lot earlier than he would have wanted. Ted, we'll go down to you.
So it's a 2015 Ferrari engine in the back of that Toro Rosso, just to remind people. It gave a big old cough and a splutter, and then he suddenly lost speed. But by his careful parking means that we will not get a safety car, and so there's no advantage for Lewis Hamilton on that, much as he might wish a safety car. But I think the phrase going to settle for second isn't in the Hamilton vocabulary, is it? He's not settling at all. After such a horrible weekend, you might have thought, forgiven him for just thinking, oh, you know, I'll bag the 18 points for second. He's not. He's going after it, and he's just going to thrash the car to get there.
But it's still hurting though, Ted, because of the yellow flag down there for Verstappen. I agree, very well parked car. He couldn't overtake, so he's only just now gone past Wehrlein and homing in on the Sauber of NASA, and then he's still got 2 Red Bulls, so it did hurt him in the end, unfortunately.
Yeah, just a quick line, Crofty, for you. You were asking about Ericsson earlier.
Yeah.
He started on the soft and has since used a couple of sets of super soft. So if you can make the super soft set that he's on at the moment last to the end, he doesn't have to stop again.
If he can pronounce it, it'll be doing well.
Yeah, exactly. So for all you Ericsson fans, it looks like he's not having a too bad a Grand Prix, but he could go to the end of the set.
We've got 100 rubles on this race, Ted. I've got the fields, you've got Lewis Hamilton. How's your money looking, do you think?
Well, if form is anything to go by, I'm going to lose my 3rd bet to you in a row this season. But you never know what's going to happen in Formula One. As the great Murray Walker always says, anything can happen, and it usually does. Whatever happened to Hamilton could happen to Rosberg in terms of the MGU-H and Mercedes unreliability. So Hamilton could yet win this race if by unreliability, if not by pace and overtaking Rosberg himself. But long way to go.
And 100 rubles, by the way, it's about £1. It'll be a bag of crisps on Kravitz at the airport tonight.
4p.
Listen, the gap's come down again.
Yeah.
7.7 seconds now between Rosberg and Hamilton.
Intriguingly, and that was the lap where he had to overtake the 2 cars and go past the yellow flag. So now Rosberg's cleared Ericsson. Hamilton's got Ericsson, Kvyat, and Ericsson, Ricciardo, Kvyat, to put it in the correct order now.
And Hamilton's just gone fastest overall through the first sector on this lap 36. Rosberg's tyres will be fresher come the end of this race. And how much will Hamilton have taken out of his tyres in his pursuit through the field and trying to chase down his teammate? There are 2 pockets of action here, and 2 very distinct battles going on within those 2 pockets of action. 1 and 2, Rosberg and Hamilton, surrounded by a few back markers from Ricciardo down to Gutierrez, and then Magnussen and Palmer 7th and 12th, the 2 Renaults, have a gaggle of cars in between them. Just looking, if Carlos Sainz is on for a 10-second penalty as well, McLaren could be on here for a double points haul this afternoon, Martin. The last double points, of course, was Hungary 2015. It would be very much their best results since then. Watching Grosjean and Magnussen there, then comes Grosjean, then Perez, then Sainz. He has a 10-second time penalty. Felipe Nasser has a 5-second time penalty.
Hey, firm Lewis, I've got a bit on at the moment, mate. So, Lewis, it looks like we have a water pressure issue.
What?
Well, I hate to say it never rains, but it pours if we're talking about a water pressure issue. But once again, mechanical problems for Lewis Hamilton, and that is the last thing he or those cheering him on would want to hear. Doesn't mean it's terminal for him in this race, but might it be that he has to settle for second if he can?
Rosberg's had a clear run, he's driven beautifully, his tyres are 4 laps newer, so you can't have a feel he must be sitting there thinking, okay, I can cover this off. But Lewis has been, it's 5 seconds he's taken out of him since the stops now, although he's still got traffic in the way, and it seems maybe a water pressure issue.
Hamilton, whose car was taken apart so that they could replace the MGU-H that failed in qualifying. Put back together again, the guys from Brixworth, the high performance power, doing a sterling job and working pretty much through the night. Didn't take a penalty because they replaced the broken part with something that was like for like, but now a water pressure issue for him. Behind Hamilton, Raikkonen is 13 seconds further down the road. He's comfortably clear of Valtteri Bottas, 8 seconds or so between the 2 Finns. Felipe Massa and Fernando Alonso complete the top 6. We're on board at the moment with Sergio Perez. Perez not very far behind Romain Grosjean, and Grosjean About a second and a half, but lapping slightly quicker than Kevin Magnussen in front of him. And still the blue flags wave as Daniel Ricciardo doesn't need blue flags. This is actually for track position. Ricciardo gets past Ericsson and goes into 13th.
That is a new lap record, Crofty. Under 1 minute, under 100 seconds for Nico Rosberg. A 1:39.6. And I think Ted has some more news on that water pressure issue.
Well, I'm just waiting for further news from Mercedes, but presumably it means it's losing water pressure, Martin, doesn't it?
Yeah, and there's nothing
normally,
there's nothing at the controls you can do about it.
Exactly.
Except
that normally ends up with an overheating problem.
Yeah, well, he's going a bit slower than Rosberg on that last lap, as Rosberg set the new lap record. Hamilton lost a second to his teammate. So you assume he will be advised under safety and reliability grounds by the pit walls. Just ease it off a bit, Lewis. We'll try and manage your pace just a bit here. He's got 15 laps, Martin, to try and limp home. Started this race 36 points behind his teammate. I know it's a long season ahead. And both Mercedes drivers keep pointing to that fact, but you could ill afford, lose 25 points to your teammate in one go. Even if the season's 100 races long.
Yeah, they can moderate the water pressure. I don't know if they've got any pumps on board where they can top systems up, and they run at very high pressure, but that's a difficult thing to... They transfer oil through the race as well, as I understand it, but whether they can transfer any water, I don't know.
So problems then for the man who's won both World Championship Russian Grand Prix.
Interesting to see if... Sorry, Crofty,
I was just going to say, no, not at all.
Interesting to see a few heads flopping over to the side of the cockpit through turn 3 there. Wasn't expecting that, but yeah, there's some drivers there resting their heads in 3.
Magnussen's been doing it all weekend long, I think.
He was one of them.
Like Simon Lazenby on the bobsleigh run with his floppy head, as he was told. But he doesn't do the exercises that these boys do. Is it really that demanding? Turn 3 for a modern-day Formula 1 driver?
It's a long way around there, and they tell me they're putting more load through the tyres now than at any point in the history of F1. Seriously, so much downforce these things have got.
They'll have even more next year when they change the regulations and whack on a load more downforce. Lock up there from the Haas of Esteban Gutierrez. This is great. It's a real train of cars here. With Jenson Button right on the back of it. Now, if you're Jenson Button, this is absolute perfect for you. You went into this race saying a bit of fuel saving, we're going to struggle a little bit, but he's now put his car in the right sort of position to start picking off some of these guys one by one in the closing 10 laps.
Yeah, he hasn't got the straight line speed. He'll have to be Dan Deere on the brakes, but he can see up to 7th place there, Magnussen in front of us. Let's have a look through turn 3, see whose head's hanging off. Jolyon Palmer then just behind them there in 12th.
There's your race leader, Nico Rosberg, and the gap back up over 11.5 seconds now. Hamilton, has to be said, still lapping faster than Kimi Raikkonen. He's not under pressure for 2nd place at the moment. We are on lap 40 of this Russian Grand Prix.
Williams are going to be pretty disappointed with that, aren't they? Back in 4th and 5th. Over half a minute behind now. I thought they had a bit more race pace than that. I think they were just damaging their tyres a bit too much, as we saw in the early stages.
Ever since the pit stop, Bottas has not been able to fight Raikkonen back at all, really, in any stage. I mean, 4th and 5th will represent a decent points haul for them, but not in the way that they were expecting, I think, from 2nd on the grid and from 4th on the grid. Bottas was able to fight for a bit, but even with their rapid pit stops, the Ferrari of Kimi Raikkonen caught them out. Romain Grosjean will be happy to be back up in the points again. They've suffered from tyre temperature issue this weekend in the Haas. Certainly suffered from that in China as well. I wonder if he's struggling a bit with braining there as well, Martin, the way he exited those 2 right-handers.
Well, we seem to fight that quite hard, don't we? We have done all year, but he carries a lot of forward speed with it. He's really turned into a fine F1 driver, hasn't he, Romain Grosjean?
I agree on that one. 30th birthday in China saw his 5-race point scoring streak finish. In his 31st year, he'll be back in the points if it stays like this afternoon. Ted, down to you.
As we can see sort of Jenson Button flashing through our screens, I've been watching his lap times compared to Sainz in front of him, and they're pretty equal. I'm sure Jenson's trying as hard as he can. He does want to try and overtake him if he possibly can, knowing, of course, as he does, and I've checked with McLaren, Jenson does know that Sainz is going to get another 10 seconds added to his race time. So it looks like Button is in sort of for a safe 10th, P10 and a point at the moment. But I do think he wants to try and overtake him on track if he can. We have Pascal Wehrlein, the star of our pre-show, in for a stop now, putting the super soft tyres back on. It's not the odd strategy, that, but at a very long stop.
Yes, quite. Maybe
that's horribly long. Come on.
Is he gone yet?
No.
Still there.
Problem on the left rear. Can't get it off.
He's still working on it. I can see it from our commentary box window as we watch Grosjean and Perez on the track itself, and now we can see the problem. Finally, that left rear does come off. He's been sat there for a very long time as Pascal Wehrlein.
As much steam coming out of Dave Ryan's ears as there is coming out of the brake ducts there.
Dave Ryan at the Manor team, the racing director, formerly of McLaren, long-time McLaren man. So we've lost Rio Haryanto in the other Manor, and we've lost Nico Hülkenberg in the other Force India. We're now riding on board with Sergio Perez. We've lost Sebastian Vettel after he was hit from behind twice by Danny Kvyat. And we've lost Max Verstappen, who going into this race was one of 4 drivers to have completed every racing lap in 2016. The other 3 being Hamilton, Rosberg and Ricciardo. Well, Danny Ricciardo has been lapped at the moment, so we'll go to Spain with only 2 drivers at the moment, completing every racing lap in 2016, and they'll be the 2 Mercedes of Hamilton and Rosberg and of Hamilton, and out in front 13 seconds the difference between the 2 silver arrows. Same 13-second gap back to Kimi Raikkonen, currently running in 3rd.
Just to remind you of that radio call of Lewis Hamilton, it was, "Are you there, Bono?" Yeah.
Lewis, the situation has stabilised.
So
you're under less pressure.
Yeah.
The water pressure's under less pressure.
And he said, yeah, we've got a lot on right now. And anyway, the good news is, the update, timely. So, 13 seconds the gap has grown to. Presumably, he can get back on the gas now.
Sergio Perez, now he stopped for a second time for those soft tyres on lap 27. Romain Grosjean has been going since lap 17 on his. Now, this is where Perez can really start to slice through the field, you'd think, in the last kind of 10, 11 laps of this race. If he can clear Grosjean, ahead of him is Kevin Magnussen, and Magnussen is well within sight as well for him. Confirmation that Lewis Hamilton was losing water pressure. Just to confirm that, some updates from the Mercedes team. So there is Magnussen. Pascal Wehrlein has been out of sync. He's been lapped. Grosjean and Perez, and round they go. Round the roundabout at turn 3 with the flags of the nations that competed in the Winter Olympics in 2014 hanging a lot more limply today than they have done for the rest of the weekend. There's been quite a stiff breeze blowing around this circuit.
It seems to affect these current cars a lot, doesn't it? A crosswind, the drivers all start saying how little grip they've got. This is the main scrap. Magnussen 7th, Grosjean 8th, Perez 9th, Sainz 10th with a penalty to add, and Button.
Jolyon Palmer's dropped off the back of this scrap now, albeit he will want to keep within 10 seconds of Carlos Sainz, of course. At the moment is doing so. Perez with a 2-stop strategy. Ricciardo and Ericsson, Kvyat, Gutierrez and Wehrlein also running a 2-stop strategy here today. That Haas with the Ferrari engine, it's a bit of a stubborn mule as far as Sergio Perez is concerned at the moment. Quite slow enough for his liking. He's been stuck behind it for a while.
Yeah, Grosjean gets off down the pit straight quite nicely, doesn't he? And normally, the Force India with the Mercedes engines, pretty fearsome in a straight line.
So Ferrari obviously developing their engine well, bringing upgrades to this race for the works team, spending some tokens as well. We're riding on board now with the McLaren. of Jenson Button, heading on his way down towards turn 2. Round once again, huge amount of marbles on the outside of the track. I have to say, I'm really impressed with the job that Kevin Magnussen's doing at the moment in a Renault that they didn't think would be very competitive in the race in terms of a point scoring position. You know, he's not looking too much in danger in that 7th place.
Very interesting, they were struggling for speed, but I see second in the speed track, 329 kilometres per hour, so pretty big slipstream and DRS there, presumably.
It's the closest fight on the track. We're on lap 44. And the gap between Sainz and Button, it just shows you when they had their tyre changes as well. Button with tyres that are 9 laps fresher. We'll try and help him with his overtake, but he's holding station at the moment. Grosjean leads this quartet, this quintet, through the rather fiddly end to the lap once again. And right on the back of this comes your race leader.
Well, this could be interesting.
Nico Rosberg, yeah.
Problem is when you're first through, you kind of wake everybody up a little bit to the arrival of the leaders. Jenson knows what it's like to lead and to be held up. Well, he'll be getting out of the way, as he'll be helpful, I imagine. But he's in a good little fight here, and he knows it.
Well, we've got the race leader in our view, Martin, and while he's trying to pick his way through, 42 points as it stands at the moment will be his championship lead to that man there, Lewis Hamilton, who's round about 14 seconds adrift, and only now 11 seconds clear of Kimi Räikkönen in 3rd. Going to be a 2nd consecutive weekend where Rosberg's had the easy job, where his teammates had to fight through, and okay, it's a better weekend for Lewis Hamilton. But, you know, he's on a roll. He's on his way to a 7th win in a row. You know, Lewis Hamilton hasn't beaten him since he won the world title. Rosberg's taken every race since. And I know it's early stages of the season, but you know, what do days like this do to the confidence of someone like Nico Rosberg?
I think since he made that error back in Austin last year and handed the race and therefore the championship on that particular day in history to Lewis, he's been away, hasn't he? He's absolutely been imperious, and he's not showing any signs of doing anything different this year. What we really haven't seen due to Lewis's problems is a really brutal straight fight, have we, that we're looking forward to.
But does that brutal straight fight have to come soon, do you think? You know, Hamilton's had the bad starts, he's had the mechanical, you know, unreliability. For Hamilton's own confidence, does a brutal straight fight that he wins have to come soon?
Yeah, well, we thought Ferrari and maybe even Red Bull would start getting in the mix and making it uncertain that if one finished first, the other Mercedes would automatically finish second, but right now that's the way it is, so it'll be a hard slog to pull that back. It's different to 2014, you know. The cars are generally more reliable, with the exception of Lewis's, it seems. And I think Rosberg's got more belief than he had back then. He'll be hard to pull in now, but it is an awful long way to go.
Well, the lead at this Grand Prix do Mercedes, never been beaten in a Russian Grand Prix in the World Championship, and this and the last 2 years, and in the previous non-World Championship Russian Grand Prix back in 1913 and 1914, and they're on for a 30th 1-2 finish at the moment. Hamilton's advantage over Räikkönen, we'll keep tabs on it for you, 10.5 seconds. Räikkönen's advantage over Bottas, 11.7 seconds. There is Kimi Räikkönen. Yes, he is still running, and he's a long way clear of Valtteri Bottas, on for another podium this afternoon. If it keeps like this, it'll be his 82nd in Formula One. Ted, down to you.
Got a cracking little story about Fernando Alonso, Crofty. What was his last lap time?
A 1:42.4.
Right, the lap before, I think, lap 44, Alonso pumped in a 1:41.0. And he did it. He came on the radio and said, I just wanted to have fun. So he turned the engine right up, turned the fuel mix right up, turned everything up, and then just went for it and did a lap time at least over a second quicker than he's having to do at the moment, just to save his tyres and save his fuel.
It's not bad for a GP2 engine, that.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good, isn't it? Just wanted to have fun. But I don't know, MB, what does that say for you about the formula we've got at the moment. That they can't with the fuel restriction. I know it's going up by what 5-10 kilos next year.
I don't think it's a huge. Once the safety car came out, it's not a big fuel issue here. It tells you they got a lot of latent performance. But let's be honest, Ed. You know, the tyres haven't degraded. These have been like the Michelin and Bridgestone days, haven't they? I think it just tells you that they can't unleash all the battery, all the internal combustion engine, and lean on the tyres more than a lap. I hear what you say.
Yeah, I guess so. But listen, all credit to Alonso. Cracking drive from him, P6.
And Jenson Button, at the moment, 11th fastest, but only half a second behind Carlos Sainz. To repeat, Sainz takes a 10-second time penalty. At the end of this race, Felipe Nasser will take a 5-second penalty and into this race as well.
Wow, that was a surprise.
And there's a Williams of Felipe Massa putting on the super soft tyre. Now, Alonso is a long way back, the man directly behind Felipe Massa in this race. So I suppose it's a free pit stop, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a freebie, yeah. Providing nothing went wrong.
Which it didn't. Sergio Perez has just dropped back a bit from Romain Grosjean. I wonder if that's because he had to jump out of the way to let Nico Rosberg through under the blue flags. We're talking about how it kind of ruins people's races when you have to get out of the way. You can see there the gap that was really close between Grosjean and Perez has now got ever wider. Massa's back out onto the track again, and Fernando Alonso still a long way behind him. 5th for Massa and 6th for Fernando Alonso. And he'd been running he'd been running for 30 laps on that set of soft tyres. And Massa said they might as well.
Sainz with a 10-second penalty anyway. Don't trip over him, Jenson. Would they be able to tell Jenson the latest radio rules? 21-point rule?
I'm pretty certain that Ted said that he had been told, actually. Down the inside, he's having a little look anyway on Carlos Sainz. Quite a chance to get past him there.
Yeah, he needs to get past him now because, you know, just up the road is Perez and Grosjean. Chance of more places there for Jenson.
You asking the questions on the podium today?
Yes.
Excellent. Kimi Raikkonen, if he's on the podium, he will become the man to claim Ferrari's 700th podium finish. If anything could bring a smile out of Kimi, you might want to try it.
Would bet on it.
Not even with Ted's 100 rubles, quite frankly.
Four drivers out of this race. There's one of them, Max Verstappen, but interesting, isn't it? China does it, despite a big brutal track. China doesn't really throw cars out of the race, is it? Where they have great reliability. Yet here, and of course a lot of it was tangling down into turn 2.
What it did, China, it produced 128 overtakes as well. Huge amount of overtaking. It had a little bit less this afternoon, but it's been an eventful race at times for Rosberg, though. It's been yet again a stroll out in the sunshine. His teammate is 12.3 seconds behind him. The gap to Kimi Raikkonen now under 10 seconds. It was 9.7 seconds. 5 laps remaining here at the end of lap 48. As Kevin Magnussen is lapped by Nico Rosberg, and look, Sergio Perez now getting a lot closer to Romain Grosjean, and he's jamming on the brakes and the carbon dust coming out of the sides. That gap between Hamilton and Raikkonen now down to 9 seconds. I dare say second place will put a bigger smile on his face than Ferrari's 700th podium in Formula 1.
Grosjean pitted on lap 17, 10 laps earlier than Perez. He's doing a fine job holding that place. Jenson Button following a man he described as a bit of a nutter last year. In fact, he was telling me just last night over dinner, Jenson, that actually it was the night before. He went, they move all over the track, those Toro Rosso boys. They're all over the show. But they are pretty feisty out there.
Feisty with each other, let alone with cars from other teams.
In fact, it's what cost Carlos his penalty, actually, isn't it, for moving across the track on Jolyon Palmer. Yeah,
forcing Jolyon Palmer off the track on the exit of turn 2. And, they're catching Magnussen, I think, just a touch here as well, are Romain Grosjean and Sergio Perez. So this battle for 7th place, big lock-up by Carlos Sainz And Jenson Button, well, got away with it because Button was just a little bit further back, but I wonder if he's going to get away with it for much longer. Button now might have a little go into the final, into the penultimate corner. Does. Jenson Button was going to be ahead of Carlos Sainz because of the Spaniard's penalty at the end of the race, but he's decided he's going to take him on track as well. Button moves into the top 10 then, and McLaren are on for a double points finish for the first time since Hungary last year.
Sainz will have a very flat-spotted front, right front tyre as well for good measure.
And behind Carlos Sainz, Jolyon Palmer, long way back, but I wonder if Palmer can gain on him in the last 3 laps. We see here Perez chasing down Grosjean once again. Magnussen just in front. You get the feeling more dust comes out of the front brakes of the Force India. If you could just get past Grosjean, as it stands at the moment, Magnussen might be within touching distance. Perez's last lap was a 1:41.9. Magnussen's was a 1:43.5. But the trouble is he can't get past Grosjean.
It's a reverse of last year, isn't it, when Perez was hanging on and trying to basically make his car as wide as possible. Massa's trying to do the fastest lap of the race and take the full house away from Rosberg. But Palmer has got Daniel Ricciardo for company as well, over 12th place.
After Ricciardo, Ericsson, and then Kvyat, and what was an afternoon where Red Bull were targeting a 5th, maybe a couple in the top 8. They're going to go home pointless from this race.
Yeah, remember what Christian said to me on the grid, that we hope we can split the Williams today.
And a talking to, I'm sure, for Danny Kvyat from Dr. Helmut Marko, from Christian Horner. Just Sebastian Vettel going onto the pit wall and asking Christian Horner, we think, to have a word with his man. Certainly wanting someone, I think, to have a word with his man after Kvyat double tapped him twice into that second corner. You might want to talk about that later, and hashtag Ask Crofty will answer some tweets once this race is finished. Where's Sergio Perez going to finish? He is desperate to try and finish ahead of Romain Grosjean. He's currently in 9th place. Grosjean running in 8th. He just can't find a way past.
Yes, Grosjean then lap 17, just to remind you. He's getting there. Whatever they did, they've been lost, haven't they, through China and through most of this weekend. But they found the sweet spot again on that.
Avoided the trouble as well at the first corner. Well, Grosjean did. Gutierrez got caught up a little bit by it. And that is Jolyon Palmer getting overtaken by Daniel Ricciardo. Ricciardo 12th now in this race. I'm just looking how far he is behind Carlos Sainz. Make that 11th. For Daniel Ricciardo, he's less than 10 seconds behind Sainz.
Pitched on lap 40, I think, Ricciardo. 29, sorry, for those. Bit of DRS down there, and boom, straight past the Renault. With a Renault engine.
Yeah.
Well, whatever they like to call it, Tackway.
But it's identical, badged up differently. And the working relationship are way more harmonious than it was 12 months ago. Alonso, you think, safe in 6th place, despite the fact that Magnussen is lapping slightly faster.
He should be okay, shouldn't he? But gap down to 7, yeah, he should be fine with that. But Grosjean then doesn't have DRS either, but Perez behind him does. Kind of half expected that Force India to breeze past the Haas of Grosjean. Oh, he nearly did, look.
Nearly did.
All 4 wheels off the track, boys. Don't bother worrying about the racetrack.
Well, they don't any other race.
Yeah.
So Nico Rosberg out in front now has over a 17-second gap. We're looking at the fight for 8th place here between Grosjean and Perez, but we're keeping an eye out on the leader as well. Kimi Raikkonen down to 8 seconds, the difference between himself and Lewis Hamilton. Checkered flag, I'm sure, can't come soon enough. The man with the water pressure problems that they've stabilised, but giving Hamilton no chance of catching his teammate. Just in a mode to get the car home. And Mercedes 1-2 from pole and 10th on the grid. And the team saying, look, we're going for a 1-2 today. We think we've got the pace to do it, and they have had.
Rosberg still going faster than anybody else in the first sector lap. He's got plenty of speed and grip left. He's not been challenged today, has he, with Lewis's grid position. Lewis has, in the immortal words of Ted, settled for second.
Absolutely. Rosberg now starts his final lap of the race.
Look at that, 39 flat for Rosberg.
He has the fastest lap. He had pole, and he's led every lap, and he's going on his way to victory for the first Grand Slam in his career, and what will be a 7th win on the trot. He'll join Schumacher and Ascari and Vettel, and the only men to have done that during this streak, and have won more races than his dad did in his entire career. And if he's not smiling when he's talking to you on the podium, he'll never smile, Martin Brundle.
So I think he will be today, but that is an important lap he's just put in there. He's basically saying, yeah, okay, I've been out front, I got lucky this weekend. And to be fair to Nico, he's the first to say, I've been lucky, my main rivals had problems. Yep. But that's a marker he just laid down, that 39.0. That is a massively fast time, a second under the old lap record.
Bernie Ecclestone and Vladimir Putin watching on from the VIP seats. A third Russian Grand Prix in which Mercedes will keep up their winning record here in Sochi, where Jenson Button will keep up his 100% point scoring record here in Sochi as well, where both McLarens on their way to a points haul for the first time since Hungary in 2015, and whilst they'll celebrate that small moral victory down at Woking, at Brixworth where they make the engines, and at Brackley where they make the chassis and the rest of the car, they will be celebrating yet another race victory. And it's a race victory that completes his tally and continues his tally in 2016, and it's his 7th race in a row that he takes the checkered flag first. It's Nico Rosberg who wins in Russia. His magnificent season, his magnificent streak carries on apace with another Sunday afternoon where he was in complete control. His teammate Lewis Hamilton, after problems in qualifying yesterday, comes home to complete a 30th 1-2 in Formula One for Mercedes-Benz. Hamilton takes second place, and a fine race indeed it was for him, making his way from 10th on the grid. And it's Kimi Raikkonen, who started third, who comes home third to take Ferrari's 700th podium in Formula One. He wins the Ferrari battle, his teammate forced out by Danny Kvyat at the opening corner. He wins the finish battle as well as Valtteri Bottas comes home in 4th place for Williams. 2 cars for Williams in the top 5. It's Felipe Massa, who we're on board with now, who will come home to take 5th place. And whilst they might have harboured hopes of a podium, it certainly wasn't to be. Bottas coming home in 4th place. Massa takes another top 6 finish. He will take that 5th place, and it'll be his 49th top 6 finish, Felipe Massa, since the start of 2011. Amazing consistency for the man who celebrated his birthday, his 35th birthday, just a few days ago. Fernando Alonso, at the tender age of 34, comes home to take 6th place ahead of Kevin Magnussen, who opens Renault's points haul of the season.
Hurrah! Excellent drive, Nico. Well done. We've finally done it in Russia.
Terrific job, Nico. Well done. Thank you, Paddy. Awesome weekend.
Yeah, top job, Nico.
Thanks, everybody. Everything worked really, really well this weekend. Thanks a lot.
Reference there to the fact that he started on pole last year and he had to retire with a throttle problem during the race. And Tony Ross, his race engineer, saying, yeah, we finally got it done in Russia. So Magnussen gets Renault's first points of the season. Romain Grosjean continues his and Haas's excellent start to their life in Formula One with 8th place, holding off Sergio Perez. Jenson Button takes 10th, and Ricciardo finishes ahead of Sainz, ahead of Palmer and Ericsson, and Kvyat, Nasser, Gutierrez and Wehrlein. Confirmation then, the winning margin, 25 seconds between Rosberg and Hamilton. Kimi Raikkonen was 6 seconds off in 3rd place. He had a comfortable margin over Bottas. The top 5 really quite widely strung out, and we lost from this race Verstappen, Vettel, Hülkenberg and Arianto. Let's hear from the Mercedes-Benz head of motorsport, Toto Wolff, who's with Ted.
Well, he's got it all